Good evening, students. So today we are going to discuss two laser systems. That is, number one is the semiconductor laser, and number two is the chemical laser. In your course, there is a brief description. I need to only give a brief description, overview of what chemical laser is. You don't have to go in much details of the chemical laser, but semiconductor laser is a very important laser and you have to go through it very detailed manner. So today we are going to discuss both this type of lasers from the unit third, types of laser, from the course laser systems, laser physics. So before going to discuss about the semiconductor laser, we must understand what is a semiconductor. We all have used this semiconductor laser diodes. This is nothing but a PN junction diode that emits light as a result of recombination of the electron hole pair. So firstly, what is a semiconductor? Actually, a semiconductor is a material whose resistance get decreased with the application of temperature, and its band gap lies between the region of insulator and metals. And the approximate band gap value is around 1 to 3 electron volts, and these are of two types. Number one is the intrinsic, which are considered as a pure semiconductors, which can occur as it is. And in this intrinsic semiconductor, like silicon and germanium, we usually dope some material, and after doping, this has become extrinsic semiconductor. So this extrinsic semiconductor are nothing but the semiconductors that are manufactured and whose properties can be tuned via doping. So what is a doping? A doping is an addition of any foreign material within the host material. And this extrinsic semiconductor are of two types. Number one is the N-type semiconductor, and number two is the P-type semiconductor. N-type semiconductor has electrons as their majority charge carriers, and p-type semiconductor has holes as their majority charge carriers. So there is a shortage of electrons in this p-type semiconductor. And the junction, if we talk about the junction, so different materials can be joined together. So if we have some deposition techniques. So if I take a substrate like a silicon wafer or a quartz substrate, something like that, and if over that material, if I deposit another material, say any white bandgap semiconductor, if I dope that, if I deposit that material, and if I do the Hall measurement of that material, and then I can get the concentration and the type of charge carrier. So that's how I can know whether this material is a p-type or a n-type. So if it is a p-type material or an n-type material, then we go for another doping, another deposition on the same material, which we expect that say like doping of aluminum can give an n-type character to zinc oxide. So if we do that, and if we are fortunate enough to get a p and n type of carrier concentrations, carrier types, then we can form a p-type semiconductor. And there are two types, that is a indirect band gap, and another one is a direct band gap. So light sources usually radiates via usually are direct band gap materials, and photo detectors are made up of indirect band gap materials. So I will not go into the details of what is a direct and what is an indirect band gap. Simply a direct band gap is one where the conduction minima of the conduction band is in a straight line with the maxima of the valence band. In another case, they are not in the same line, so we need some other means to excite the other means also. So basically the principle of this is, when a PN junction is forward bias, why forward bias? Because we need a higher recombination rate, and higher recombination rate can only be possible if we have a more number of electron and hole pairs in their respective regions. Means more holes from the p region to be shifted to the depletion region, and more electrons to be shifted, has to be shifted from the n region towards the depletion region. And for this we need a forward biasing. So what we do in this forward biasing, we use to connect a battery's positive terminal of the battery to the p side, and negative terminal of the battery to the n side. And if we do that, then the electrons and holes, if we talk about only the electrons, then the electrons get repelled from the n terminal of their battery, and the holes get repelled from the p terminal of the battery. So both of this gets repelled and moves towards the depletion region. And more they move toward the depletion region, there is a more chance for them to get recombined within the depletion region. So when a p-n junction diode is forward biased, the electrons from n region and holes from the p region cross the junction and recombine with each other within the depletion region. During this recombination process, the light radiation, which is nothing but the photons are released from the certain specific direct bandgap material like gallium arsenide. And this radiation is known as recombination radiation. The photons emitted during this recombination stimulate other electrons and holes to recombine. And as a result, we get a population inversion and stimulated emission takes place, which produces laser. See how it works. This is the p-n junction, and this is forward bias. This is the positive terminal of the battery. It is connected to the p region, and this is the negative terminal of the battery. It is connected to the n region. Because of this, the electrons get repelled from here, and because of positive side, the electrons get repelled from p region, and this holes moves towards the n region. This electrons move towards the p region, and in between this there is a small region, very small region, which we called as a depletion region. Within this depletion region, they get recombined, and this is the direct band gap. And because of this recombination, the electrons when recombine with the hole, so the electron hole recombination, there is an emission of photon, and more photons get recombined, they also stimulate other electrons and holes to recombine. So because of this enhanced recombination, a radiation is emitted, which we call a recombination radiation. And if this recombination radiation get intense, then we call it as a laser radiation. And see this, the construction. So the active medium of this semiconductor laser is simply a p-n junction diode, and which is generally made up of gallium arsenide as an active medium, GaAs, gallium arsenide. The pumping method that we use here is, as I already said, that we need to make a forward bias to enhance the recombination within the depletion region. So forward biasing is the pumping scheme. Resonator, how this resonator? So this is the schematic, and this is the N region, this is the depletion region, and this is the P type semiconductor. So this whole makes a p-n junction. What we do is this inner part of this N region is rough. The inner part of this P region is also rough, and on the top of this we make a metal coating. Why we need this metal coating? Actually to make contacts. If we need to apply a battery, then we must have some contact where we can apply the biasing. So this inner part is rough, and the upper part of this P junction is coated with a metallic materials, say silver. Generally we use silver to make contacts. So this is the roughened surface, this is the metallic one, this is again a metallic one, and this one is a rough. So from these two parts, there will not be any emission of photons. And these two parts, these are the cleaved surface, where this part is partially reflecting, and this part is fully reflecting. So the photons get oscillated back and forth within this, in between this cleaved surfaces. So this is how a semiconductor laser diode is made up of. This is the another figure to show how the forward biasing is done and all. I hope this is clear now, the working and the construction. So the advantages, if we talk about the advantages and disadvantages, these lasers are very small in diameter. Actually, this is in the range of few microns only. So they are very small in dimension. The arrangement is quite simple and compact. They exhibit high efficiency. The laser output can be easily increased by controlling the junction current, and it is operated with less power than Ruby or a CO2 laser. They requires very little auxiliary equipments, and they can have a continuous wave as well as the output, as well as the pulsed wave output. But if we talk about the disadvantages, then it is difficult to control the mode pattern and the mode structure of these lasers, and the output is usually 5 to 15 degrees. Laser beam has a very large divergence, and the threshold current diameter is very large, and they are not much good in coherency and stability. But they are widely used for fiber optic communications, to heal the wounds by IR radiations. They can also be used as a painkiller, and we all are using the semiconductors in our laptops, in our phones, and in everything. So this are highly useful lasers. CD writing and reading can also be done. So in summary, these are the solid state semiconductor lasers, where the p-n junction diode is the active medium, which is usually made up of gallium arsenide, and the active center is the depletion region where the recombination can take place. The pumping method uses the forward biasing using an external battery as a source. The resonator is made up of two cleaved surfaces, and the output power is very low. The nature of the output is can maybe a pulse or a continuous wave output, and the wavelength emitted is around 8,300 angstrom to 8,500 angstrom within the IR region. Thank you. Next is the chemical laser. So I will give a very brief outline of this chemical laser. I'm not going to go in details of this. So basically in this chemical lasers, we have chemical reactions. We have some species then that used to react chemically. So the chemical reactions are the only pumping source. We don't need any external pumping source for this laser systems. So these chemical lasers are also termed as self-pumping lasers, because the chemical lasers, when initiated, could proceed without any external source of power, and they can be stored in comparable volumes and weights. So the release of chemical energy is associated with making and breaking of chemical bonds. Actually, these are chemical species, and there will be some making and breaking of chemical bonds. And for this lasing action, we need exothermic, which can release energy. We don't need an endothermic process, because an endothermic process, there is an absorption of energy, and for lasing action there should be a release of energy. There should be a release of energy. So for lasing action, the chemical reaction should be exothermic and of the form A plus BC to form AB star plus C. This star represents the excited state. So A in the ground state, BC in the ground state, this when combined, then they form AB molecule in the excited state plus C, and with an release of energy. So the chemical reaction can achieve a very high population inversion in any energy level system, which is the main requirement for a lasing system. And in your course, HCl and HF lasers are to be described. So first is the HCl laser. This laser is the first chemical laser which is reported by Sir Caspar and Pimentel in 1965. And firstly, the chlorine HCl is hydrochloride. So the chlorine was vigorously photodissociated into atoms, which then reacted with hydrogen, yield hydrochloride in the excited state suitable for a laser. So there are two possibilities how it can work, and then you can judge by yourself which is more favorable. So hydrogen in the atomic hydrogen in the ground state, this when combined with the atomic chlorine in the ground state, it forms a hydrochloride molecule which is in the excited state plus chlorine with a release of this energy of the order of 189 kilojoules per mole. Why this negative sign? This negative sign indicates exothermic energy release. And this process, this equation 1, the reaction occurs at very low pressure of the order of 0.02 torr and leads to a high population in the vibration levels and produce population inversion. On the other hand, if we talk about the other possibility, then we have chlorine atom. This one combined with hydrogen, we get an HCl molecule in the excited state plus chlorine plus energy of the order of 4 kilojoule per mole. But what this positive sign indicates? This indicates an requirement of energy, not the release of energy. So here the HCl molecules appear in the zero vibrational state, E0 equals to 0, and only 0.1015%. Only a very small fraction of HCl molecules can occupy the vibrational level corresponding to the energy 189 kilojoule per mole. So if we compare this first and second reaction, then only first reaction can lead to vibrational excitation. And the wavelength that we get is of the order of 3.77 micron. But these HCl lasers are very less efficient as compared to HF laser, because within from this two possibilities, only one possibility is actually responsible for the lasing action, and this possibility is ruled out. And if we talk about the HF lasers, these are more efficient and pulse laser, and in this the chemical reaction is initiated by fluorine atoms photolytically formed. So if we incident a photon on this fluorine atom, then we get 2F, and this is followed by a chain reaction. Then the reaction of H2 and F2 to form an HF molecule in the excited state can again takes place in two steps. Number one is the cold reaction and number two is the hot reaction. So in the cold reaction, what we have is this F is reacted with H2 to form a HF molecule in the excited state with a release of energy of 134 kilojoule per mole. And H. And in comparison to this, we have in the hot reaction, there is again a release of this much energy. So in both of this, vibrationally excited HF molecule appears in both chemical reactions. So there is a large amount of energy release, whether the reaction will take place with cold or a hot reaction. So this is how a chemical laser is. Now I'm going to discuss the types of lasers, a summary for this laser system. So this is the different characteristics, and these are the different types of lasers. So with this table, you can easily conclude what a laser system and what are the various characteristics of a laser system. Like for Ruby and Nd:Arc laser, both these are solid state lasers, but Ruby laser is a 3-level system, Nd:Arc is a 4-level laser system. The active medium in Ruby is Ruby laser is ruby rod, which is nothing but chromium doped Al2O3 like sapphire, and this Nd:Arc we have neodymium ions that are doped in YAG, and some of the neodymium replace the yttrium ions. In helium neon laser, we have helium neon gas mixture as the active medium. In CO2 laser, we have carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and helium gas as a combination. gas combination as an active medium. In dye lasers, we have dye laser which are dissolved in suitable solvents, and in semiconductor lasers, we have p-n junction diode, which is usually made up of gallium arsenide as a active medium. If we talk about the active centers, then in ruby laser, chromium ion acts as an active center. In NdArc laser, we have neodymium ions acts as an active center. In helium neon laser, neon acts as the active center. In carbon dioxide laser, vibrational levels of CO2 acts as the active center. Dye laser, organic dyes, semiconductor lasers, depletion region where the recombination is taking place. Pumping scheme for solid state laser, we have optical pumping. For the gas lasers, we have electric discharge. For dye laser, we have optical pumping, which is either be done using a flash lamp, but generally we use laser sources. And in semiconductor lasers, we use forward biasing as the pumping method. Here the ends, the ends of the rod itself is coated with mirrors with the different reflectivities. In gas lasers, we have two mirrors. One is partially reflecting and the one is fully reflecting. In dye laser, we have a mirror and a diffraction grating as a resonator. And in semiconductor laser, two cleaved surface acts as a resonator. Nature of the output: in NdArc, it can be pulsed or continuous, which depends on the doping concentration. In solid state laser, we have generally pulsed. In gas laser, the output is continuous in the form of continuous wave. Semiconductor laser may be continuous or a pulsed wave. Dye laser, we get pulsed wave. And the wavelength emitted in case of ruby laser is 693.4 nanometers. That is in the visible region. In NdArc laser, it is 1.064 micron, which is in the IR region, and it is highly harmful, very harmful. So, and in helium neon laser, this is 632.8 nanometer, which is visible region, red color. CO2 laser, we have 10.6, which is far IR region. Dye laser, we have tunable wavelengths. And semiconductor laser, again an IR region, it is around 8300 to 8500 angstrom. So in spite of this, several advantages, disadvantages, every laser has its own specific applications. Like for making toy, we cannot use NdArc laser because these are very harmful lasers and emit invisible radiations. So for making toys, we can only use ruby lasers, helium neon laser for pointers. Then CO2 laser is used for medical purposes in the case of face uplifting or face resurfacing. So every laser has its own application, own specific applications. Hope this is clear to you. And if you have any query, then we can also discuss by taking an online class. So thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed and stay safe.